Hey everybody, happy holidays. So as many of you probably know, Pistachio is no longer the littlest baby in our household. About 12 weeks ago, I gave birth to our daughter, Nora, and it has been quite the whirlwind of a 12 weeks. So much so that I'm glad I wrote things down or I wouldn't even remember how Pistachio was doing with the baby 2 weeks ago. So in this video, I'm going to just share with you how that transition has been, adjusting a dog to a newborn and vice versa. And hopefully it gives you something to maybe prepare for if you're having your own child and introducing it to your dog. Or it'll just be solid Havanese and baby cuteness. We'll see. A quick introduction to Pistachio if you're new to this channel. Pistachio is our 1.5-year-old chocolate Havanese. She is a female. She is 12 pounds, almost the same as her human little sister. And her personality is extremely playful, quite confident with other dogs and other people. She is a jumpy gal. She jumps on guests or us when she's excited to see you. And we have exposed her to kids before we had our daughter, but not that many opportunities to do that. So she had, seen children in public settings like parks, playgrounds. And then we do have a toddler nephew who she's known since he was a baby, and she's gotten to spend some time with him. So for the meeting day, we had a bit of a strategy for how we wanted to introduce the two of them. While I was in the hospital, Pistachio was staying with her grandparents, aka my parents, for a few days. So my parents came to the hospital to meet the baby, and they brought back with them for Pistachio a baby blanket. So this blanket had touched Nora, it smelled like her, and my dad set it on the floor for Pistachio to sniff, and she was really interested in it, he said. I thought that was interesting. She sniffed it for a very long time, gave some soft little tail wags, and I think she could already tell, this thing smells like family. Once we came home from the hospital, we made sure that we greeted Pistachio without the baby first, because we knew she'd be really excited to see us. It had been a few days at that point, and we wanted her to get some of the high energy, jumpy, gleeful, reunion vibes out of the way before she got to meet the baby. So we greeted her, and then one of us went upstairs and brought down the baby. So Pistachio just immediately seemed to know that this little bundle we were bringing downstairs was human, which I didn't know how she'd react. I mean, babies are so small. Nora was so sleepy at this point. It's not like she was moving a lot. But Pistachio knew it was a little person, and she was interested. In the beginning, we didn't want her to touch Nora immediately. We're probably being abundantly cautious, but we just wanted to make sure that she had a slow warm-up to the scent and the sight. So we used a sit and stay command and gave her treats while she just observed the baby. And then we let her come over and give the baby a couple kisses, and that was it. It was a very, positive first meeting, but again, I've said this before, but our goal with Nora and Pistachio is not that they have to be besties, but they need to be able to respect each other's space. So after that, for that first week, we just, monitored it closely whenever we had the baby out of our arm's reach, just wanting to see how Pistachio did with her. And Pistachio did great. Pistachio was pretty indifferent, honestly, to the baby. She would sometimes, I think, forget the baby was even in the house, and sometimes baby would be sleeping for a little while, and then she'd wake up and Pistachio would sort of raise an alarm, like, what? Or her little arm would flap up and Pistachio's like, it's real? For that first week, we would affirm any positive interactions, any positive or neutral interactions. So we would continue to give her treats when she would get close to the baby, or when the baby would cry, especially if the baby squealed or cried. We wanted her to not shrink from that or to be scared or triggered by it, so we continued to give her treats. I think we stopped that after the first week because they were doing so well together. I think the biggest concern for me with bringing home a newborn to Pistachio was that Pistachio sleeps in our room in a crate. And I knew baby would be sleeping in our room in a bassinet, and babies make noise at night. A lot of noise. That ranged from her, waking up and crying and screaming because she was hungry, or just the very noisy, active sleep that newborns do. And I was really concerned that Pistachio would either wake up and woof at it, what is that? She'll do that sometimes if she hears something outside in the middle of the night, she'll sort of wake up and alarm a little bit. Or I was concerned that she just wouldn't be able to sleep and that she'd be stuck in her crate and be really restless, and I was just worried. Especially because we'd be getting up with the baby so much in the beginning. It wouldn't just be the baby noises. She'd be hearing us walk around too. And I was worried that would mess up like her day to night understanding of like, wait, my parents are awake. Should I be awake? Here's the shocking thing. And I hope this is true for anyone entering this situation. But from night one, Pistachio did not care about the baby making noise at night. I have very sensitive mom ears now. And I had them even before we had the baby with Pistachio. So I can hear when Pistachio's moving around in her crate and when she's restless. And it was like nothing. Like, she was so chill about it. I can't explain this, but Pistachio seemingly slept right through baby noise. And the few times that I would hear her, you know, creak around there and reshuffle and change her position or whatever, like, she put herself back to sleep. She woke up the next morning, her normal happy self, taking a second to get out of the crate, doing her big stretches, and she was just like, okay, what's going on? Our flow has just kind of been whoever's doing the morning feed for Nora. The other person lets the dog out of her crate around like 8 a.m. It depends on kind of what time we went to bed, but usually around 8 a.m. And that person will go let the dog outside and get her fresh food and water. So even if Ben and I had to come back to sleep, because in the early days, we were sleeping until like 10:30 because we got such little sleep the night before. So at least then Pistachio had her food and water. We'd make sure the blinds were open for her to go look outside if she wanted to. And she would either spend some time downstairs independently or she would come upstairs and sleep on the bed longer with us. But we tried pretty hard to make sure her crating schedule was what it had always been, that she wasn't in there longer or shorter than she needed to be, even if our night and mornings were weirder and not what they should be. I think those first few mornings, she was a little surprised the baby was in our room when she would come out and she would see the baby and she would wag and sniff and then she'd just move on. Like, she was pretty indifferent generally. Another wild thing that she did for the first few weeks was put herself to bed. She's done this in other stages of our life, but it was like consistent for a week. And I think it had to do with me and Ben's schedule being so different. So we weren't going to bed at our crisp 9 o'clock like we usually do. And Pistachio said, I still do that. This is not my child. So she still, used her freedom to go to bed at 9 like she always does. And we would just find her in our bedroom at 9 o'clock in her crate. Like, okay, I'm ready to go to bed. And we might still be up to 10 to 11, however the night was going. And that actually was such a relief. I mean, I felt like she was helping her mom and dad out. It was one less thing to think about. So that was pretty cool. Okay, so kind of how it's going now. 12 weeks out. These are the main things I guess I've noticed with Pistachio since the baby was born. I have seen her understand that mom and dad do not have as much capacity to give me attention. This is just like a sad truth of having more than one kiddo in your house, right? I think this applies to even having 2 children in your house, but having a baby and a dog, like it is impossible that mom and dad can only focus on the dog now, when before we kind of only focused on the dog. And 12 weeks out, I've seen Pistachio adjust to this. It was a bit of a journey with her figuring out like the voice that I would use was for the baby sometimes and not her. And that is a little heartbreaking, right? So, there's times I'm talking very sweetly to the baby, and that is a voice I've used for Pistachio before. So she just had to kind of learn that if mom's eyes and head is turned towards me, it's for me. If it's at the baby, it's for the baby. And she's there now. She doesn't respond every time I start talking to the baby thinking it's for her. Pistachio also just cuddles a lot more now, so she seeks us out more and sits on us. And I've really loved this change, especially as a mom going through a huge life transition myself. Like, it feels like Pistachio is taking care of me a little bit, and that's like the sweetest thing ever. So I love the times when I'm feeding the baby or, we're just trying to wind the baby down for bed and Pistachio will fit her way onto one of our laps, which is so cute. And now that the baby's going to bed a little bit earlier and doing longer sleep stretches, Pistachio is definitely looking forward to when Ben and I go down to the basement to watch TV, and she will just fit her way onto us any way she can to cuddle on our laps. And that's like our little time, our time with our little firstborn. I think we have a visitor. One sec. Oh no. We have a visitor. It's Pistachio, and she's wet. Yay. You want to chill with me for the rest of the video? Would that be fun? Thank you, baby. Benjamin just brought up her bone, so if you hear clicky noises, that is the puppy chomping away happily beside me. As far as Pistachio protecting the baby, this is something a lot of people talk to me about, like, oh, she's gonna be such a good guardian, she's gonna be so protective. I don't think Pistachio has become territorial about the baby, and I'm okay with that. We've had a lot of guests over, people coming to meet the baby, and if anything, Pistachio is just desperate for their attention over the baby. So a common thing will be that she will sit on the baby while the baby's on someone else's lap. I don't think that she's overly concerned with the baby's protection when we have guests around. It's just more, it's my time to shine, is what's going through her head, I think. Let me tell you all something. Remember how we taught Pistachio how to use a doorbell a couple weeks before the baby was born? That is one of the best things that we did, because we are just not tuned into her schedule like we used to be, and we're not always on the floor that our back door is. So she uses that doorbell all the time, more than she needs to. I can confirm she uses it just because she's bored sometimes, but it's able to tell us if she needs to go outside, and we haven't had a single accident since the baby was born, which was something I was really worried about, because I know sometimes when dogs go through big life transitions, they can sort of regress with some of their potty training. I'm sorry if that bone noise is loud. Pistachio still likes to lick the baby's face, and I would say that she's liking to lick the baby more as baby gets older and more interactive and more spit-uppy. Let me tell you something about Pistachio. Pistachio loves breast milk, which means things with breast milk on them she likes to lick. She's getting better about this, but you know, we have a lot of burp cloths laying around and like leak pads laying around every now and then, and she in the beginning would destroy those things. I always like to be transparent with you all about, you know, the hard parts as well, so that you can feel prepared if this happens to you. But Pistachio has destroyed several bottles. She's torn the nipples off the bottles trying to get to the milk. And she's also very interested in binkies for whatever reason, so we have to keep binkies away from her. Believe it or not, she doesn't care about diapers. I am shocked by this, but she has never gotten into a diaper. We also don't give her many chances, but she doesn't really care about diapers. But burp cloths, milk pads, and bottles and binkies were all things that we had to monitor pretty closely to make sure she didn't have access to them. And we still keep the nursery door closed pretty much if we are not around. Pistachio used to have free reign of our house, but we use the gate a lot more just to continue establishing boundaries between her and the things that she's showing interest in getting into. We continue to correct Pistachio's interest in those things. We like when we can see her get into them in is and we say, which is such a little thing, but at this stage, she's almost 2 years old and she knows we're going to take away something if she gets into it, whether it's the thing she's interested in or she gets booted from the room. And I'm seeing her do a lot better. She's been ignoring binkies much more in the last 2 weeks, and that is a win. Another thing that was hard, and I saw this around the midpoint, so maybe around 6 weeks for the baby, that's when we probably had the most hard things happening with Pistachio, and I think it was really her going from, oh, there's something new happening right now, but I'm sure it'll fade, into, oh, I think the baby lives here, she's not going anywhere. That happened around like the 6 week point, and something we dealt with around that time was some regression with her stealing food from us. Pistachio has a really good sit and stay command that she's really good at. If we have a hand out like that, she knows that she can't, move. She's frozen until we say otherwise. And we had done that so much with us eating meals. We eat a lot of meals on the couch that she also just knows instinctively she cannot get that close to our food. We don't allow it. Now, however, around that 6 week point, I would sometimes have a plate of food next to me on the ground while I was doing something with the baby who is also on the ground. And twice in 1 week, Pistachio snatched something off my plate. And that was a real bummer because it wasn't something she used to do. And she has a pretty good drop it command, but not with those really high value things. And the things that she would steal would be so high value to her, we couldn't get her to drop it. And it just wasn't really a great situation. And that made me feel sad. I felt like we were going backwards. However, since she's adjusted more to the baby, she started respecting us again. And I think too, from that like 6 week point where things were getting hard and she wasn't listening to us as much as she used to, we broke out treats more. So we kind of just went back to the basics with some things, and we were doing a lot of treats with recall when she would come back inside, when she would come, and when she would show positive behaviors in a situation where she'd been showing more frequent negative behaviors. And that helped. Sometimes you just got to go back to the basics. So I think that's basically it. We are getting very close to the point where Nora will be able to start grabbing, and that's where we have to start switching gears and making sure that the puppy is protected from the baby. That's going to be a whole nother experience, and hopefully I can make a video about sort of that next phase of life with baby and dog as we get to it. But right now, I'm just enjoying that. It feels like we've arrived. At 12 weeks, it feels like we've arrived at a point that Pistachio is really good with the baby. We don't have to religiously monitor them when they're together. I can trust Pistachio is going to be good around the baby if the baby's on the floor, if the baby's in her snuggle me. But yeah, we're at a good point. I feel like our whole little family is kind of used to being a family the most that we've been so far, right? So it feels like the four of us have found a rhythm, and all of that's going to be flipped upside down when I go back to work in a few weeks. So, things are always changing, and that's life with both a baby but also with a dog. Things are always changing, and your dog has to adjust, and there's some painful periods of transition there. But I think we've made it through another hump, and one thought I've had repeatedly is that I'm glad Pistachio is here. I'm glad that we have this little dog. I'm also glad she's not a true puppy while we have the baby. I'm glad that she's, almost 2 years old, and we're seeing the fruits of all of our labor in the last 2 years, because it feels like she's been able to take care of mom and dad a little bit while we've been, running around with our heads on fire. And I'm really, really glad that she's here. I feel like we learned so much through raising her that has set us up for success with little Nora, and I'm just really thankful for that. I hope you all get to enjoy the holidays with your loved ones, and we will be enjoying Nora's first Christmas as a family. All right, I'll try to keep you posted. Bye.